and typed it all up. So case number 3, our counselor, X, was at dinner with a close friend after an intense day in a graduate class on grief and trauma. 5 minutes into the conversation, the friend casually mentioned, by the way, my wife's former father-in-law committed suicide yesterday. The father-in-law had given an indication, had not given an indication? Had given an indication, okay, because the screen is covering some of it, of wanting to do this for 2 years, but no one took him seriously. His wife's twin children by her previous marriage have experienced 5 major death losses in the last 5 years. Their own father, an aunt, an uncle, a grandmother, and now a grandfather. They were 16 when the first death occurred. What do they need, and how do you help them? They've made an appointment to see you this week. Okay, so your friend is talking about, so any comments or ideas right off the bat about this somewhat complicated situation?
Why didn't anybody look into this during all the other deaths? Or even what he was saying?
Well, the friend may not know what was going on outside of it. This is just what he's bringing up to the counselor, we'll call him Counselor X. And so they're coming to see you, all right?
How old are they?
They were 16 when I first started.
Okay, yeah, so
18, right?
25 years.
25 years.
Yes, so they're now 21. It says 5 major death losses in the last 5 years. So they were 16 when the first death occurred. So now that's quite a bit of stress factors heaped up on top of. So
And it's immediate family. It's not like it's somebody on TV that.
okay.
That's kind of close to their family.
So question number 1: describe your initial comments and questions. So we already are starting to talk about that. So you're wondering, has anybody talked to them over the past 5 years about any of these losses?
The grief was probably never fully, thank you, fully like expressed, because each person that passed away in those 5 years, that's a lot of people. And they were all so close, so the grief was still ripe.
And I mean, obviously, there's a lot of history of suicide. I'd be curious if anybody else in the family has made any comments or suspicious, kind of indications that they might be
Thinking about suicide.
Yeah, I'd be curious about that.
Okay, that's a good point to realize, because that does happen a lot in families when there's several suicides or whatever. It does. So that's something to make note of when you actually come across your appointment with the family.
Were these all suicides? These
No.
5 deaths? Oh, okay.
No, just it's the closeness with the 5 losses.
I'm not reading that this person had experienced these 5 deaths was close to each one of those people. I mean, a father,
My wife's former father-in-law committed
an
suicide.
aunt, an uncle. These could have been people that they weren't really close to, right?
It
Yes.
could be, because if you see it, it's the person's, the friend's wife's family. So it talks about her ex-father-in-law, because apparently there's a remarriage here, right? My wife's former father-in-law.
Right.
So there's a remarriage there. So there's an ex in the mix here.
Right.
Committed suicide. Does it affect someone, an ex-daughter-in-law, do you think?
It says his wife's twin children by her previous marriage have experienced 5 major deaths. So it's the twin children that actually,
That's their adolescence, going through their adolescence from
Yeah.
16 to 21.
Okay, so it's also this person's stepchildren, right?
yeah,
So the person that's bringing it to X's attention has his wife, so it's her ex-in-law's family.
I suppose I might ask this person, who's now 21,
There's 2 of them, 2 twins.
which one of these suicides
Or deaths.
affected them the most? Now that they're kind of an adult, they might focus on one particular person that took their life that affects them the most, and then you could, go from there on why. And also, it would help you to determine if just the fact that all these people around them are killing themselves, if they're just traumatized for that reason alone.
Well, we're not sure that they were all suicides, but the twins' father is one of the deaths. So obviously that's going to be a major factor. And the person remarried this person. The wife remarried the friend that's bringing it up to the counselor. So the twins'
Okay.
father died.
I'm confused. I thought 5 people also committed suicide.
No. So within the last 5 years, the twins' father has died, and just yesterday, their grandfather committed suicide.
and the grandmother had already passed
And
away.
a grandmother had
A
already,
grandmother.
right,
And
so-
now a grandmother.
an aunt and uncle, okay? So there's a lot of questions about clarifying the death, details, right? That's probably a good idea. All right, so we have a lot of questions about this because it is a confusing thing. Okay, which of the losses do you address first?
I would think, once you ask the question, which one of these deaths have affected you the most, that would be my go-to first.
Okay. Any other comments about how you address the most impactful loss, and what wording would you use? What would you say?
Maybe just in general, out of all the deaths that occurred in such a short amount of time, which one you feel like really hit you the most?
Impacted them the most.
Yeah, similar to what you said. Which one really impacted you the most?
And so I think one of the things we want to realize is that there's no one perfect answer of how to address this, because we each have our own personalities and our own vocabulary in the way we said this. So we want to find out who, and each one could have a different impact, right? Because the father may have been quite a long time ago, so they've kind of moved forward from that, right? But a very striking thing is the manner of people's death also is very important, right? If a grandmother that dies because she's aged, without any long-term illness, is, even if you're close, is not the same as your aunt getting hit by a car in front of you.
Correct.
Right, so we want to find out what type of death also that these people experienced. Suicide is obviously one of the most traumatic and impactful. Okay, is it best to see them together or separately, and why?
I would say separately. Definitely. Especially being twins.
Okay. So there is a family dynamic. We have the friend, his wife, and his stepchildren, which are twins. So sometimes they might come all together initially, right? But if you're in a group, somebody usually dominates, right? So that somebody else's problems or hurt doesn't get brought out. And then you might be hesitant to talk, right, about certain feelings that you have or complications with the other people around.
You could always make it an option later if they wanted their family to come in another day or, initially I think, it'd be a good idea to see them separate. They are, I think, adults by now.
Right, 21.
And, but then after getting that feel for the family dynamic,
Right.
close with their family, they might not be close with their family and might not want them in the room or not feel comfortable, but others may be really close and want maybe a session or two with the whole family.
Right, because it does affect the family dynamics. It makes a difference if these twins are off at college or living with the husband and wife as well, okay? What do you think some of their questions and concerns might be at this time?
What to do next? What do I do next? What can you help me?
Why did
Process
this
this.
happen? Why did this happen?
Because they're 21. How can you process this?
Okay, we also don't know if the grandmother that died was the spouse of the father-in-law, so there might be some help needed as far as planning a funeral.
Right.
Because sometimes we do need help with that. So the twins might be asking why. What information would you need to help them move forward in their lives?
The family background, for sure.
Mhm.
Who found the father-in-law? The deaths of each person, the time span between each person, and how close the people that are most affected with are with those people.
And how they died.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think I said that.
I don't know.
You might.
How they die is important. I just
Yeah.
remembered a question from like the crisis and trauma debriefing, which you can apply is, tell me about your reaction when you first heard the news.
Right. How was your reaction? How do you?
Tell me about what happened. Who did you hear it from? So that might give you an idea as to what each person is experiencing. Okay. Anything else you want to consider before? You guys aren't doing as much talking as the last time.
I don't know if this is something that,
Well, this is too close to my personal life, honestly, so I'm just kind of laid back.
Why is it?
My mother-in-law died Christmas. My mother died Super Bowl Sunday. My father-in-law died Memorial Day. And 2 years later, we got divorced. It was because of all the trauma, the three. And then
It
my
contributed
father
to
died that Thanksgiving a year later, so it was like the second 2 years later, it was like.
So what would have helped you sharing your experience with us and the people that are that are online and that are going to see the video? What would have helped you at the time it happened?
To have more people give me support without actually, what can it's like, let somebody know that I just wanted people to hear me talk without fixing me. That's what I wanted to have that happen, and it just didn't happen.
Which sometimes that's true, because we go to a funeral, to the funeral home, and people are repeating the scenario. They need to process it, but we don't have that communication. And today, that's with communication and families being estranged and not,
Right.
even people, and especially young people today, they don't have very intimate
Right.
interactions. They're kind of like very superficial. So we do need someone to talk to. We
Yeah.
do need to be understanding and a listening ear. And not, like we were saying, we don't always need to be fixed. And sometimes when you meet with when we meet with this family, might not be ready,
Mhm.
but just to make ourselves available for when they are ready,
Mhm.
because but I think that ministry of presence, that being there for someone, and just somebody sitting there with you.
Yeah.
And there was nobody at that time when I went through it. There was no ministry around at all. It was just like it wasn't supposed to be. Not important, I guess.
Well, sometimes we don't extend ourselves. We're occupied.
Well, I was in a different situation. I wasn't a Christian at that time, so we were in the same, you know.
Right. So this is one of the advantages of being in the body of Christ, that even if there's certain subjects we don't want to talk about with somebody, we feel uncomfortable, just being there with them is very important. When we're talking about grief and that fogginess of what's going through things, sometimes you just need somebody to go to the bank with you, you know, to help you just do some ordinary things like, can I pick up some groceries for you? Okay, any other comments before we go through our counselor's X's response?
I think also is really important, and I know Becca is really, this is, I think, your forte about listening. Because I remember you speaking about it once somewhere, and how important it is for us to really listen to what those people, that person in particular is saying, watching how they're reacting. And, you know, if you've got any kind of, especially the Holy Spirit, you know, giving you that discernment on how to react to their actions or their, whatever they're doing or saying or movements, or, you know, sometimes just sitting next to them and just letting them, you know, even if it's in quiet silence. I know that's been comforting to me sometimes when someone was just there.
And sometimes touch is
Yes.
important. Some people don't like to be touched, but just
A hand on the arm.
that's pretty benign, you know.
Yeah,
Like sometimes when you touch in other places, it might be a little bit too personal for people. Some people like hugs. Some people don't like hugs, but just being close.
And even offering, can I hug you? Can I hold your hand? Or
Right, and so we try to pick up on verbal and nonverbal cues. Like if you've got the teenager, I can imagine the teenager sitting there like this, right? They don't even, you know, want to be there maybe, you know, but they have a need to. Okay. The author's first concern was for my friend and how this was impacting him. Okay. So it's the friend that came, and the author's X responded, I hear your concern for the children, but let's talk about how this is impacting you. When you first heard the news, how did it affect you? For a left-brained individual, which I don't personally hold to your strictly left brain or right brain, I think they're a mixture, but that's one of those kind of classes that you can take to find out about how your brain works, right? For a left-brained individual, it could have been asked, what went through your mind when you heard this? For a more right-brain, feelings-oriented individual, he would have asked, when you heard the news, what was your feeling reaction to this tragedy? Or what went off inside of you? Okay, so if you're close to a person, you know whether they're more black and white or touchy-feely, right? If you don't know, you kind of have to be just kind of playing it by ear. But those are some, let's repeat that. What went through your mind when you heard this? Or when you heard the news, what was your feeling reaction to this tragedy? Or what went off inside of you? In working with the teenage grandchildren, some of the responses listed in case 1 could be used, which I didn't bring case 1 with me. Okay? So that's his initial, okay? In most cases, it's best to address the most recent loss too. First. That's point 2, right?
Right.
So which one? A lot of times in the world, they're trying to dig up things from the way past and rebuild, but what's affecting us most is what happened to us
Right there.
right there. So if you go back, there might be things to draw from in the past, but the most recent death. So why the author dealt with his friend first, because that's the initial contact. He hasn't had an interview with his friend's family.
Mhm.
Okay, we'll call him Z. The friend is Z. He hasn't met with them yet, but he's going to. So the first thing is we might think, well, this person wasn't even related to him. Why would it make a difference? But it's
You brought it up.
right. He brought it up, so that meant something to him, right? So how did that first loss affected the suicide? Well, if it was your children's grandfather, or your children living in your house's grandfather, you would be concerned about how it's affected the children
Household,
too.
right.
So that was what
Household.
his first concern was.
I would hope.
Well, yeah, you're right, because sometimes those relationships are strained, and obviously it wasn't the case because he brought it up about, he didn't bring about how it affected his wife. He mentioned the children, and it doesn't say stepchildren. So that says something to me. Right?
Yeah.
To me, that indicates
A closeness.
some type of a closeness, right? I mean, he evidently came into the family when they were teenagers, right?
Mhm.
Because their father or somebody died when they were 16, and now
Right.
they're 21. So
Right.
he
Right.
came
You know,
in
it's
with,
really amazing, these little details that you pick up. Just one word in a sentence someone says that like sets the picture of where
Sets
they're
the
at,
tone.
you know?
right,
And if we're not listening to that,
right. And I
it
think
could take a lot more time to get to the.
Root of the problem.
to make an
If you
effect,
ever get there, you might get bunnied off.
right, because we talk. Our first thing is we want to solve it and heal everything, but it's not,
Right. It's a process.
right.
And you know, the fact that he didn't say stepchildren, that speaks volumes, doesn't it?
To me, it does, yes.
It's
Okay.
interesting. It's like I'm gleaning from areas that I didn't expect to study in this. Because I have a difficult time following just my father-in-law's best friend's sister.
I know, it was very
When I do prayer
complicated.
request in that area, I go like, God, you know what they're talking about.
Right,
And then I
right,
pray
right.
a prayer, you know, but sometimes it's simple. Anybody else might get it. I think I'm the only one that don't get it.
Well, sometimes making a list too, writing it down to
Good
delineate.
point. Draw a little tree, you know, like they
Right.
do in those.
Right, because everybody sees things
Ancestry.
differently. You know, words, we read word picture, you know, the paragraphs or pictures or
Sure,
that kind of thing. Okay,
sure.
okay, number 3. The question was, is it best to see them together or separately? Why? You could say to the adult children and teenage children or grandchildren, you had a number of significant people die in your life. It's like an overload of dying. How are you handling this? Initially, the author would focus on the suicide. We could assume that the other family members are coming together to see you, but if one dominates the conversation, you could extend an offer to see each individually if they so desire.
I agree.
And they might not, like I said.
Yeah.
Or you could break up a session and suggest that you see each one individually for a while and then come back together. Okay, is there anything we want to Anybody wants any observations about this, number 3?
Well, I think that initially you probably should meet with the group initially. And then if you're going to individually meet with people, let that first meeting determine that. I don't think you can even determine that right off the cuff, right out of the beginning. To say, hey, I want to meet with this person. It's like, why?
The mom makes the appointment for one of the twins, right? And says, I don't even want to be. So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it seems right. It seems right to meet with the group and then branch off.
Yeah.
Seems in a lot of therapies I see on TV, that's the way they do it.
Yeah. It might be that somebody is most obviously affected and suicidal, so
Yeah,
therefore,
that's gonna be
in
top
themselves,
priority.
it's affected in that way, and if that's very obvious, you would obviously.
You're right.
You would want to get that person, the most urgent,
There you go.
dangerous
Right.
response is the one we want to deal with, but in general, and, to me, again, the suicide is the most, in your face thing that you want to deal with, is because it's what happens to a person that kills himself, I mean, people have all kinds of questions. Okay?
It states, I was looking to see who made the appointment, and it said they made an appointment. So does that include the ex-father-in-law? Does that,
The next father-in-law was dead, is the one.
That's
okay,
suicide,
it's
yeah.
the friend.
The friend, we're calling him the friend, see, so the friend apparently has made a family
My,
appointment.
my wife's former father-in-law committed, so
Right.
it's that's his ex-wife, right?
Yeah.
My wife's former, okay, so Z married
She must have been married.
somebody who later in the paragraph, we find out that she wasn't divorced from the first husband, he
Right.
died.
Okay.
So he
she
doesn't
was-
say whether, well, actually, it doesn't say that she was divorced from him before he died. He could have died when they were married, or he could have died when they were separated. It doesn't indicate to us. So it might have been that the whole family, the children were together in a family relationship when their father died as well, or he could have been out of the home. We don't have that, which didn't occur to me before, but.
This is a very convoluted situation, and I think most cases are probably that same way,
Mhm. Today, you're right, I agree.
I mean, I know my own family is very convoluted, and there's a whole lot in there. And somebody who didn't know me and I started sharing, they'd probably just like,
Right, because even today, we have people who never have a legal marriage who are together,
Right,
a couple together, and they may each have children from other people, and they're mixed in the household, and so then the children have complex relationships with the other person's children, with the partner, and their parent that is no longer in the situation. And then they break up, and so you rip these children apart. That makes me so sad.
But like,
Yeah.
even though these marriages are, like you just said, there's grandparents that are established by name as grandparents.
Right, and they
That's
lost.
not a legal term, is it? It's not like, I mean, if you don't get married and you have a child, you still have a grandparent.
Right,
So that portion stays, that could be confusing language when you talk about that. It's assuming too much,
Yeah.
And that's really not the reality nowadays, like you said.
life is very,
It can be all over the map.
so,
I think when it's pretty much solidifies it when he's in the break here, number 3, where it says that it was the children and grandchildren, it wasn't stop. So to me, it's like they have a family unit that are together,
close.
and the loss of their family unit, but it's not like he said, she said, she's over here, he's over there.
so it's important to try to understand the dynamics of the family too.
Right.
Absolutely.
Question number 4, was, what do you think some of their questions and concerns might be at this time? Okay, so the response here is they may be at a point where they have questions, or they could still be numb and in shock because the death was just the day before, right? And even it could be they'll probably meet as a family within a week, but even still, they could be ready to pursue it, or they could be like, I can't believe it. They could be in some of the different states of denial or shock. So they need to know that whatever they are experiencing at this time is a normal reaction to the overload of deaths they've experienced. Often the author responds with, given what you've been through in the past few years, losing family members, I'm just wondering what questions might be running through your mind at this time, at times. Using such a statement, question indicates these thoughts. It's all right to have questions. It's normal. It's safe to voice the questions. There's no pressure to tell me everything before they are ready. The way the question is asked and tone takes the pressure off. They've been through a difficult time and you know it. Here are some of the questions that could be expected in regards to the suicide of their father or grandfather. If they do not raise these questions, one might ask, could it be that you may be asking? So you could say, you may be asking. Could you be asking, why would he have taken his life? Why would he prefer death rather than staying here with us? Did we cause this in some way? Are we responsible? Why didn't we see this coming? Why didn't we take him more seriously? We could have prevented this. So that indicates guilt, right? Sometimes we have guilt. Why did God let this happen? If he did this, do we have the same tendency? Their actual questions will be determined by the relationship they had with their father or grandfather. So can you add, are there any other thoughts that you add that what people might be thinking?
I think for me, personally, I would try to be a little bit more vague, maybe not. If they didn't have responses, instead of kind of like offering some.
Well, what this list is offering is giving us some ideas what they could be thinking, what they could be thinking if they don't express it.
Yeah, so maybe asking questions like to kind of help it along, like what are some fears that you're having about what happened, or what are some worries that kind of come through your mind when you think about what he did? You know, just kind of like, if they are just kind of maybe in that numb, or they're not really like.
Right, they're not ready to actually address it or think about it, but it's preparing them for when they, and you know, I wouldn't wait too long to follow up.
Right.
Just, you know, this isn't like someone was sick for a long time and you were expecting it and getting to it. So we definitely don't want to wait too long to follow up with the different family members individually or as a group. All right. Let's do question 5, and then I'm going to just get up and stretch and refresh the page over there on that other monitor. What information would you need to help them move forward in their lives? That's the book, isn't it?
Sure is.
So any things that you didn't mention before we go over the answers, the information we need to move forward in their lives? Okay, well, we'll just do the answers from our counselor X. What?
Just to be nice to yourself, it's okay.
We do need to emphasize self-care, right?
For them, right.
Because often we
Self-care for them.
don't take care of ourselves.
Mhm.
And
That's what I would emphasize.
you know, be aware of what you're going through and, you know,
Make sure they have some kind of support
And have support, right?
close to them. And if not,
people that they can feel comfortable, check out who who they have that they could talk to. Okay. All right, well, then let's read a little bit. There are several factors to find out that may help you know how to counsel those who are grieving suicide. Ask each of the members to describe their relationship with their father or grandfather. Okay, and this is something that in the initial session they're talking about. We don't want to make initially you don't want to tire someone out, but you need to give everybody at least a little bit of time to express themselves, right? So, asking them, somebody is may or may not volunteer anything. What support system do they have in place to help them with their grief? So if they don't have a church, if they have a very formal church, my mother-in-law is in hospice, right? And the chaplain calls us periodically, although in his notes he knows that we are in the ministry and we have a church body, but he still calls and follows up every month about, if you have any questions, just letting us know we're there. We've extended that to my sister-in-law, who hasn't taken that up on that to be contacted by the hospice chaplain. Okay, but they do call. The social worker calls us every month. The medical people call us after the visit. So it's a very
Good follow-up.
Good follow-up. So that's important. Understanding. One person I know of who had a close family member that took their own life. That's another thing too. The word suicide is often very harsh to them, but that's another way of expressing it, took their own life or ended their own life. Went to a grief support meeting, and there are those groups. And I think in the resources it mentions different ones that you can look up or that are national, but we can also look up support groups that are particular to our area. And this isn't just for death. There are these exercises can be applied to other types of loss too, right?
Right.
So asking each of the family members to describe their relationship with their father and grandfather, and like Marv said, the words that they use can indicate if somebody's calling somebody grandfather, what does that tell you about their relationship? Grandfather?
No, it's like a secure, it's like.
Grandfather instead of
It's
grandpa or
military.
papa.
Military strict,
More.
not papa or grand.
Not, to me, it seems not as intimate grandfather versus grandpa or what other
Yeah.
type of,
I was thinking of the step thing. That's
well,
what
yes,
I said.
right.
Mhm.
But when you're
Still,
thinking
but
of,
yeah,
if it's a
absolutely.
in-laws or a step thing, then,
Mhm.
okay. So what support do they have in place? We're just kind of talking about that. And if they don't, making yourself available to them and giving the number individually to the children as well as, and if they're not comfortable with you, we can hook you up with someone, What helped them get through the previous deaths? Sometimes they may have just stuffed it, and just buried all of it. So what helped them get through the previous deaths? Were they drinking? Did they, did they just black it all out? Did they do a lot of crying? What helped them? And so that would be something to work on, point them to. It may be helpful to have each person complete a loss history to discover which of the losses are still impacting their life. And you can see in our crisis and trauma book, this is addressed in chapter 4 for more details. If somebody wants to take a look at the book, I know Henry didn't have the book. I gave him mine to take a look at to get some ideas if he was interested in the book. I find this H. Norman Wright's Complete Guide to Crisis and Trauma Counseling like an excellent resource for dealing with events and going back as something in my shelf as to go back to. So there are other books I'm sure that are good. Okay. Another point X mentions to us is ask what would help them the most at this time. Okay, you can provide them with the crazy feelings of grief, which you all got one of those. That's a handout to give to them to help normalize. I don't have one in my pile of papers here.
I just put them back, because we got them from last week.
Yeah, you had them from last week, so.
Oh, here it is.
Or other material that you found helpful. You could also recommend a book, Finding Your Way After the Suicide of Someone You Love by David Diebel and Suzanne Foster. Suggest they consider attending a grief share group, that's an organized group, and contact survivors of suicide in the area. You can also provide that with information to them,
Are those Christian-based? Like the SOS?
I
Do you know?
don't, I'd have to look them up. I haven't. Most of them are not. You can see.
Just like AA or something like that. It's just like a higher power type.
Well, some of them,
Don't even.
right. But the one of the things about having a group together of similar people, they have an understanding of what you're going through, which I think, for example, just knowing when I've gone through losses, that having somebody there that just was understanding, that kind of understood what I was going through. Even if it's not, don't ever tell them, you know exactly how to feel, because you don't.
Nope, that's 100% correct.
Because you lost your daughter, I lost my daughter. We're different, right? But you understand how they feel. I think that's one of the things about us not having a perfect life. Because once we've gone through some tragedies, it talks about in Corinthians, with the comfort that God has comforted us, we can comfort others.
Amen.
So, but there are some different local groups. There are churches that do have different kind of like recovery programs or grief meetings. And we could even organize something among ourselves to try to provide support for each other or a person that we come across that needs just to express themselves, or just somebody that's there. Okay. Help them develop some responses and statements to use when others ask them questions or make comments about the suicide. And I think especially with young people, that people could be particularly brutal and inconsiderate. And there's all kinds of triggers, you can see things in a movie, or they could say, people say thoughtless, not thinking things, we heard and say bad things.
Mm-hmm.
The author would say, what have others said to you about your father, grandfather's death, and what are you concerned they might say or ask? It's embarrassing. I remember in a Barbara Streisand movie, okay, it was an old Jewish culture, and one of the characters, a family member had killed themselves, and so in that culture, he was no longer an acceptable suitor to someone, this Jewish daughter, because of the stigma of that person, family member ending their life. So, what would you be concerned about? What would you think people might want to ask, or you might want help explaining what happened to them?
I think reassuring them that whatever people say, they have not experienced what you just went through.
Mhm.
So if it's something that hurts you, or you take offense of, or you can't believe they actually said that to you, sort of, I don't know how you would put it, but take it with a grain of salt, because people don't understand, and they can say some pretty cruel things. My own ex-husband tried to commit suicide twice, once by pills and once by hanging himself. And some of the reactions that people had during that time, and we were in our 20s. It was, I mean, we weren't saved at the time, but some of the things that people said were just awful. And I just sort of let it, you know, I didn't even listen to them. But some people don't have that roll off the shoulder kind of, you know, they take it all in, and then they think it's all their fault and all that.
Yeah, I want to address that part there about people thinking it's their fault. I was in a conversation for a meeting about unsaved people and how you pray for them to be saved, and you speak into their lives and say they don't, and they go off and they start going down a really bad path. Well, people were in the meeting were expressing a guilt about that because, gosh, maybe I didn't talk to them right. Maybe I did. And I said, and I remember being overwhelmed with the feeling that if we take on the guilt of something we're praying for, then we have to take on the glory if it comes through. And that's dangerous. We definitely don't want to take on God's glory, but if we're down that path of it's about us, now it's about us. It's about if they get saved, then boy, I must have done a good job, didn't I? Speaking to now, if they don't get saved, now I'm going to take on the guilt. Well, you know, the glory's all God, so it's like don't take on the guilt, and that'll keep you from taking on the glory, you know?
Right,
Or something, you know what I'm trying to say here?
right.
In
We're
saying
taking on the
that,
responsibility on our own shoulders
Right,
when
right.
a person's choice is their responsibility.
yes, it might say, I'm not gonna take on that guilt because I wouldn't take on, I'm seeking God to move, you know, and how this person, he's got his own will and everything else. I don't know, it seemed to, for me, I hold on to that so that I don't take on an undue amount of guilt. Does that mean you can't ever say the wrong thing and you don't know what that effect is? Okay,
We always
but I'm
say
not
wrong
going to take
things,
on
right?
the guilt of somebody's will,
Right,
their own will. I'm not going to, you know, to where it was because of Marv that they did this. No.
no, it's not,
No. I'm
because
backing
it
off.
is their choice.
And if we can find words, I'm probably not doing a good job, but if we can find words to put that into effect in a person, maybe they'll relinquish some of that guilt that they're feeling. They're just, it's a super sadness, I think, that the devil manipulates into guilt.
Right.
But
Depending on whether they're Christians or not, depends on
yeah,
how
I
you
know,
address them
I'm
too.
speaking in a Christian angle.
We don't know, but everybody has attacks of guilt for our behaviors
Sure,
or lack of behavior. So,
it's fought every day, or, yeah.
I think what we do need to learn is to learn, well, here, maybe we didn't go as that extra mile. Maybe we did fall short.
Sure.
There's things that God was putting on our hearts to say or do and we didn't. And just use that as a learning.
A correction, yeah.
Correct.
Take correction, but don't take the guilt.
Right.
No.
Don't let that overcome you and destroy you. One life's already been destroyed. So
Right,
you know,
right.
you're gonna let that.
Right, that's a good point. One life being destroyed is enough. Don't let this destroy your life.
Don't let the enemy play with
The
you.
enemy wants it to
Don't let the enemy
destroy
play with you.
everybody near it, yeah.
He's done.
Right.
No playing. I'm busy.
So I think learning
No
from
guilt.
the situation for us, do you mind saying some of the things that people said to you about that?
Gosh,
Give us
that was
a-
a long time
If
ago.
you can remember, because I don't know that we, just to help give us an understanding.
Well, I know one of the biggest things was, why would he do that? Why would he do that to you? you know,
Yeah, what did
things
you
like
do?
that, yeah. I was sort of numb through the whole thing.
Right, which is a
Yeah.
normal response.
Yeah, and I was just still trying to comfort him and bring him out of his depression, and because one of the reasons was he felt that he had let me down, and it was during a time where we were taking a lot of different drugs and doing all that kind of stuff, so it was in the middle of all that. So the overdose of pills was, they were there, so he took them because he did something that hurt my feelings, and that was the only thing he knew what to do. But then I realized that he had tried to write me a suicide note, and the pen just sort of fell down, I guess, and he was out like a light. Called my brother-in-law, and he got him to throw up, and that's why he was okay. So we didn't call the EMS or anything, but when he tried to hang himself, his best friend found him, and he called me, and we rushed him to the hospital, and he had the marks on his neck, and when I saw those, it was like,
Right.
it was a hard thing, you know? Even now, I haven't thought about it for so long.
Right, because it's one of those
It's
graphic,
with you.
it's
Yeah.
a graphic moment to see
And
that.
so whoever found that person,
Right,
if it was one of those people that are in that room, that is one person that really needs to be ministered to and talked to and nurtured.
right, because it's to reduce the impact of that and kind of getting a feel of how they process things can help.
Yeah, right. I mean, if they shot themselves, oh my gosh, I could.
Right.
It's one thing I thought of too, like as you were talking, and then also you mentioned some things of like, in this situation, like kind of helping the client kind of process what people are saying or the kind of questions that they're asking that may seem sensitive or, you know,
Hard, whatever.
maybe just having a discussion about how comfortable that topic is for a lot of people, and a lot of people don't know how to really process suicide and depression. It's something that they're really uncomfortable with,
Right,
so their response is very like abrupt and like, well, what, you know, and it comes off very harsh and insensitive and rude.
but it is
but-
uncomfortable.
Yeah, but it's
It's their
knowing that,
reaction.
like, maybe just seeing it on their perspective, it's uncomfortable for a lot of people to even think about that, and they don't want to think about it. So when someone's in front of them and, you know, experiencing that in their family, you know, they kind of just like, they don't know how to react. And they
So
have to
sometimes
react.
people are going to avoid talking to the family members because they are uncomfortable. In addition to, so they don't extend themselves, they don't show support. Whereas if they had gone, family member had just had an illness or whatever, they might say something, they just don't want to say the wrong thing. And that's what we call like the elephant in the room.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
so helping the people that the family members that are involved vocalize stuff and see it as it's not it's, you know, just a choice of a way out that this person saw. The other thing that they need to realize is when someone attempts to take their own life, they're not thinking about anybody but themselves. And so that's when they've been closed into their misery or they've lost hope. And they're not considering how it would affect anybody else. So.
So the why did they do this to me? That's something that you can share down the road when they're receptive to hearing something like that. Sometimes it might take a while.
Right.
To see how they're
Right.
reacting
This
to everything.
obviously isn't one of those short-term type of events that you're
Right.
gonna deal with
Right,
something.
right,
This is
right,
something
right.
that the people are all gonna need some support for quite a bit of time, particularly because in 5 years, there was 5 losses.
Right.
5 significant losses. Okay, so I'm gonna stretch and then we'll go on to case 4 in about 3 minutes. So if you want to get something to eat, go in the bathroom.
Yeah, we'll probably just go before we start again. Church room takes off. So before we start again.
Oh, really?
I just got a text and it was like, sit here for another 10 minutes and then get up and go. So it's kind of like,
All right.
I'd rather just not disturb anything.
All right, well, we'll miss your input.
I
If
know.
you want to take something with
That
you.
was- No, I'm good. I had, all right, that was good. 2 carrots. No, that was wonderful. But I will tell you this, that I didn't respond to you before you said, what was this? What was your opinion on this class? Give me 1 word or 1 sentence
Oh.
of what your opinion was. And I would never responded. I didn't.
It doesn't have to be one word. Would you text it to me? So, because what I did with the other people,
Okay.
I
got it.
put it on the,
Okay, so you're looking for, okay.
something
I
that
will
you
text it to you.
text me a response of what you would recommend. And I had,
Yeah.
Mary, I didn't tell you this either because you don't text, do you? No, I didn't think so.
No.
So to make a comment to, when I put out the change for, because there's 4 sessions and people kind of figure, what the heck is this all about? I kind of asked people from last time, what impressed them? What did you take away from the class? What's something that, so then I took some of the things that 3 or 4 people said and I published it so that people would say, well, this did this, I liked this about the class. So if you could tell me something about that impacted you or helped you from last week, last month, the last class, or this class, so that we can help other people, get them involved and say, well, what is the benefit of coming to this session, the next section? I would appreciate, in the next week or so.
She always gives you.
So whose birthday party are you going to?
I don't know. I came with her, so,
Oh, she has to go, you have to go.
yeah, I came with her,
Do
so.
you want me to drive you home?
No, I'll go with her, that's fine.
All right. Well, yeah, that's the certification course that you were here when I was talking about, we're gonna try to get them organized for, spring. Yeah. Over there, over there. So, going into the wall.
Thank you. Are these all the same?
Yeah, these are all the same. No, these are about a discount for somebody that wants to take the class, and this is a reminder about this session of class, this series of classes.
I thought you said you could sit in.
You can. When people get charged for, you pay for the class edition, right? The certification. You get it. So it's less, yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, but you paid for it, right?
Yeah.
So there's a discount for people that are going to go to the class. Just like you did for the first time, right? How you get directly to the information.
So it's not good.
It's not free for them, it's free for chapters that want to refresh themselves.
Who gets the discount?
I'm getting, everybody that wants to attend, I'm trying to get people to attend the class, so I'm reducing the price.
Right.
And your sticker course.
They're, yeah, they're really 11 classes. Right.
That's what, yeah.
Yeah, that you could come and I'll, when I tell the days, if you tell me days that are good for you, then I might. I think.
I'm ready right now.
Well, Rebecca went to the far one, so.
That one day we were here from 2:30 till 6.
Oh, yeah.
I noticed it was 2 hours credit. Okay.
I know,
thought it was gonna be 4.5. I go, well, this is gonna be a good one. And I see.
It was, yeah, well, it was supposed to be.
So many technical difficulties we didn't get credit for.
Right, you don't get credit for, but see, that's,
It's all right. I think it's more funny than serious. I'm not really being serious. I'm just,
yeah.
You're just being Mark.
yeah, I'm just being
I know, I realized that, so maybe,
well put.
Well, I mean, you're one of a kind. We are all one of a kind.
Oh, nice back pedal. Doesn't work.
Did you into?
but
I liked what you said. Leave it alone. Don't run.
I actually did consider that, now you might
No, don't worry.
make some adjustments.
You said, man, those guys are, I only gave them 2 hours. Were you here that day? You were here that day.
Yeah, because I had an appointment with Peggy at 5. Luckily, she was hard at work.
10 to 6 when I left.
Yeah. And what was I gonna, I was supposed to do something after that too, and I was like, oh man, it's too late. Oh, I think I was gonna go home and wash clothes, and we can't wash clothes too late at night, you know, because it's a
Oh, yeah.
laundry room
They
in the
hear it.
apartment. But I got all my laundry done yesterday after work, which I don't even know how I did it, because
I don't think I've ever had all my laundry done. Is that even something you would want to do?
and of course not, that's my least favorite thing to do. But I did it because I needed to have, well, you know, because I get spit up and stuff on me every day now. I'm working at We Love in the nursery.
Start wearing a uniform.
It doesn't zip up, one of those hazmat suits.
Get a big pizza cloth and cut a hole in the top.
But I can't,
Wear it
they are
around.
so precious, these babies. I just got them.
Yeah, one of those house coat things.
What do they call it?
Or doctor, one of the doctor paper robes that they give you. No, our kids would just rip them right off of us.
Yeah, right.
You know,
You don't want too much,
grabbing
you
and-
don't want too much loose stuff hanging all over. You had kids hanging on you.
Why don't we get started so that Marv doesn't cut out on us early because we're taking too long.
Let's see, we're gonna be on number 4 now.
Case number 4.
Okay, see you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bring the PowerPoint stuff, Kathy. You want me to text you and remind you?
What?
You want me to text you and remind you to?
Sure, you can text me, but that's, it's right, yeah, thank you.
I love her.
Why'd she leave it? Was it something I said?
Birthday party. No, Marv.
It was something you said, Marv. It was all your fault.
I feel so guilty.
Go ahead.
Hey, you know where that guilt, you know where
Makes
that came from? That came from, somebody being ill and they're asked for prayer. You pray for them and they die. Okay? And sometimes, initially, people are hit with, they didn't pray hard enough. They really didn't give it all that they felt they were prompted to give. And so that's where that came in, where if I can pray hard enough to save somebody, and they didn't die, now who's doing the healing here?
Yeah.
You know, that's where you gotta be
Exactly.
careful.
Or who's doing the saving?
So that's why taking on these guilts and stuff, you really have to look deeper into it, because the other end of it is God
Right.
and our prayers
So as
and
Christians in
their will and
right. I mean, one of the things about faith is there was somebody that I was dealing with that, you know, they just made a decision, I'm done. I'm not gonna fight anymore, right? So you can't, they don't wanna live. They don't wanna be healed. So you're not, even if you pray and they get healed, it's not gonna stay. Because the person has,
yeah, that's a more common than I think people want to admit
right.
that happens. I can think of one guy that went to our church that happened to him. When we went in there to pray, they said, don't pray for healing, don't pray for healing, because he had made the decision that.
So you pray for peace, you pray for a transition, you pray
Right.
for them to cope with, you know, whatever. So you do have to, the thing is you have to respect people's positions. What are they doing, you know, because it's, God gave us a will,
Yeah,
so.
yeah. But I like what you said. Rebecca, is that your name?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm bad with names. I like what you said about that, suicide. Nobody's really down pat on how to process it. I really love the way you put it. I don't know, I forget how you put it. You said
Talk about
something
being
about
uncomfortable.
processing suicide.
Right.
So therefore, and then the conversation just went, when you were talking and other people talking about, nobody knows what to say. Nobody knows they're afraid to say something because they don't know, because we don't know really how to process that. But I'll tell you one thing, I'm coming to terms with it. I mean, a better understanding as people I know do it, if you know what I mean.
Right.
That sounds bad.
Right.
That sounds like every week, you know, no.
Right, but
I mean, it even got into the discussion where, like, when I was brought up, like, suicide's a sin, okay? Because there's no asking for forgiveness after you've done it. So I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. I could have sinned and drove home and got killed, and I didn't ask for forgiveness for that sin. I mean,
well,
how is
you
that?
also get a thing of what is the sin that keeps you from going to heaven or going to God? The sin that separates us from God is not accepting Jesus as our Savior. Right.
Better yet.
You know, so it's not the little things that we do. I flipped somebody off when I was driving, and then I got hit. So, and you know, I'm not going to heaven because I fell there. I sinned.
So you want to talk about something real?
That I could not even picture.
Me neither.
No, that's not likely. But I mean, people do that, right? You get frustrated and you react, and it's like, well, yeah, the reaction
Sure.
wasn't right, but that's not the thing that keeps us from God.
I know.
The thing from keeps us from God is.
It was I think it was being brought up Catholic.
Well,
It was a checklist. It was like, we need a checklist of sins. You know, there was no talk about relationship with God and being saved and
Are you talking about Catholicism?
kind of.
Like venial sin and, oh, that's just a little sin.
It's like
You
more like the letter of the law.
Piggy bank. Mortal sins, you just broke the bank. You're done.
Yeah.
But venial sins, those, you know.
And you couldn't get communion if you had a mortal sin on your soul. I guess that was another mortal sin.
Well, you couldn't receive any of the excrement.
Go ahead. Stop the recording. There's a gentleman out there that apparently he was cutting the grass or raking leaves. A guy, he said somebody's supposed to help him with the bus ride, blah, 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 blah. He did our leaves.
I think that is nothing. If somebody was helping him to do that, it would be Phil, and he would be
And
here.
he said the tall guy, he told me to come back because he's got to go to this thing on Tuesday.
There's nobody here that- there's nobody-
I don't have a penny on me, so.
No, well, that's
Yeah, that's why I wanted to say, should anybody.
He's just gonna have to come back and talk to Phil on Monday.
That's all I can tell him, this is.
Yes, because whoever, yes,
Okay.
yeah, that,
Was
whatever it
he
is.
raking today?
No, he was, and he said, the tall guy told him to come back.
Well, he's not here, so he has to come back on Monday.
Yeah, so, okay, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm like, okay, I said, I don't have a penny on me.
Yeah, but you don't want to give someone like that money. Okay. Welcome, Madeline.
Hello. I apologize for the lateness.
We're glad you could be here. You missed the first case, but I'll mail you. You want me to mail you the papers, or you want me to email you?
You can mail them. My printer's down right now. Well, you can email them. I could, I guess, get someone to print them for me.
No, I've got copies. I'll stick it in the mail with your certificate. I'm glad that you can make it, and it must be that you need to hear what's in case number 4, because we're just getting ready to start it. So
Okay.
And let me know if you can not hear our conversation. Oh, well, we're trying to, we'll have to work out the sound stuff, but I think we're doing a better job with that. So, okay, so we're gonna, can you see my screen? Can you see case 4 on your screen? Because I have it up on the screen share.
Yep. Oh, I had it. What happened to it? It's small, so I can't read it or see it, and I can't. Oh, there it is. I can make it larger. Okay, let me see if I can turn it this way. Okay. Yeah, I've got it.
You've got it. Okay. So we're on case 4 now, and I'm gonna read it out loud, and we're gonna ask for comments about first impressions, and then we're gonna go over the questions. And then the author who actually experienced this case we're going to share what he actually did as a licensed counselor. So I will mail these to you when I mail your stuff out on Monday, and we'll get started. Okay, case number 4. A man in his 50s has made an appointment for what he describes as a complicated grief case. Like the last one wasn't complicated, right? He is supposed to testify in his son's murder case. In fact, of course, this is complicated, a different kind of complicated, right? In fact, both the prosecution and the defense have subpoenaed him. The murder victim was his daughter. Thus, in addition to the intense loss of both children, he feels convicted and torn. So I'm going to read this again. It's not quite as detailed as case number 3, which was quite detailed and confusing for us to read, but let's read it again. A man in his 50s has made an appointment for what he describes as a complicated grief case. He is supposed to testify in his son's murder case. In fact, both the prosecution and the defense have subpoenaed him. The murdered victim was his daughter. Thus, in addition to the intense loss of both children, he feels conflicted and torn. Comments? Immediate impressions?
So his son, daughter.
Right, his son killed his daughter. And he has to testify.
Yeah, prosecution and defense.
Wow.
Wow. So that must be obviously a very conflicting grief, because he's potentially going to lose, he's already lost his daughter, but potentially he's going to lose or will lose his son to the system, you know. I mean, obviously he's committed murder, so there's a lot of feelings there.
Right. So,
If he's going to testify in his son's murder case, then they have to be over a certain age, right? Would they?
you mean that the son has to be an adult?
Or a young adult, at least. I don't know what the age is when they are tried as an adult when it comes to murder.
I think it's 17.
But isn't it different ages for different states, and plus we had a young man here years ago that wasn't 17, and he was tried for murder.
I think 15 or something.
So I don't know if there's, I think, we're not legal experts. I'm sure there is.
The case is established.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a way that if someone kills someone that is a minor, that they're also processed through the system. So I don't know.
Really well taken care of.
There's already a prosecutor in
Yeah, so I don't know.
the court, obviously.
But those are questions that,
filled all the
if we're dealing with
criteria.
somebody, that aren't going to come out. Okay?
Okay, gotcha.
But we don't know for sure. And that would be, if we were actually the counselor in the case, we would probably want to investigate that further depending on the age of the son, right? Just so that we know what.
And the daughter.
Right, because the daughter's age also can affect us. If it's a younger child, the father would react differently than if it was an adult child, I think, even though having lost children, we know that it's intense loss no matter what the age, but like we already know that a murder and a suicide, people react to that different than they react to an illness or just a natural expected death. Okay, any other comments before we go over the author's questions?
Well, feelings, are those the feelings, what are the feelings that might be involved in the situation? Is this man being ostracized by his support group?
The father, you mean?
Yeah, the father,
Okay, so,
because his son is accused of murder?
okay, so the father could feel like he's being isolated by his peer group or his local people. So the question is, what are the feelings that might be involved in this situation? How would you feel if one of your children killed one of your other children? That, I guess we could look at it that way, right?
Well, being the fact that he's a witness, probably saw. I mean, I'm assuming he saw what happened.
Okay, that's a
Right.
possibility. The father saw the death.
Yeah, that in itself is, a trauma alone, seeing
Right.
a murder, seeing some sort of,
It doesn't say that he witnessed it though.
well, I'm just
Oh,
Thinking out
but
loud.
he is-
okay.
He is testifying in the trial, so there
So
is
there's gotta
that.
be some kind of proof,
something
something.
he saw, something he witnessed.
So it is possible he was actually present.
I think it says he feels conflicted and torn. Yeah, I would feel conflicted too. I mean, the prosecutor obviously wants to prosecute his son, so I wouldn't want to say something to give him ammunition, really, but then you don't want to lie, but there could be things he says that the prosecutor could think he's going to get something out of it, but in reality, the guy's answers he's in conflict because at that point, I would think he doesn't want to make the situation any worse than it is. Like somebody said, he's lost a daughter, and he doesn't want to make it any worse for his son than it is already. There is a conflict. There's a conflict in.
So he doesn't want to be responsible for his other son either getting something like the death penalty or life sentence. That's a possibility.
Or couldn't it also be a possibility the fact that the son is being accused of killing the daughter, that he feels that, okay, these are both of my children, and I have to testify, not that he feels because it's that he's going to lie or anything like that, but the fact that I've got to testify about what my child did to the other child, or said, that makes people think that he's the one that killed. Well, he killed the sister or daughter. So even that in itself is a conflict, in that these are both of my children, blood of my blood, bone of my, So one killed the other, and I've got to the thought that I have loss, no matter what. I have a loss. It's a double indemnity. I've got double trouble.
Right. So on one hand, he may want justice for the dead daughter. He may be terribly angry at his son. So, and then there's a conflict of trying to support his son when he knows the son has done something wrong and still love him, maybe. Or the guilt of being responsible for the decision the jury makes. So it's kind of, but as we already discussed, the son is responsible for what he did. And whether he's found guilty or not, it's not the father's responsibility, because the son made the choice. Okay, it's the same thing as what we were talking about a little bit earlier about praying for somebody or doing something and they don't get saved, or they don't respond, or they, So, okay. What are some of the questions you would ask the father at this time?
I want to know the story. If he's willing to share, like what brings you here, what happened. Tell me a little bit about this situation. Back up a little bit, and into what.
Right, which,
Yeah, what was the relationship between the brother and sister?
so first of all, him telling the story will get us a bigger picture of where we can help support him in where he's at. And then in that, he may find out the relationship of the brother and the sister.
he could, here's two examples, here's two places he could be.
Okay,
He loved his son, or his daughter dearly. He really didn't like his son. He hopes his son gets punished.
could
He
be.
could be there. And then he could be where he knows his son did it, but he doesn't want him,
To be in prison.
persecuted by the law. He wants to give him mercy and just hope that his heart is sorrowful, but doesn't want him to go to prison, you know, and to the prosecutor, that wouldn't be, prosecutor's gonna fight to the letter of the law. I mean, it's up to the judge to give them mercy.
But he could be tempted to lie.
Yeah, so there's the conflict. The conflict, I wanna know how the guy feels. How do you feel about your son killing your daughter? Are you angry? Are you angry at him? Or do you wanna show him mercy? Is there, you know, I wanna see if the guy, like, he was driven to it maybe or something, you know, it's like, how does he feel about his son?
Right.
Does he want to see him go to jail? That's almost like one of the questions I might ask.
And sometimes our initial response is that anger, and he deserves what he gets.
Yeah.
But then you repent of it and change afterwards.
Then is talking, the prosecutor is going to love everything he's got to say, you know, because his answers are going to be exaggerated, possibly. That's a really conflict.
Yeah.
In more ways than one.
And the fact that both sides want him to testify, they're both going to be trying to pull out of him their point, their motives.
There was this case where this actually happened in Detroit. Boy, he was in the car. His sister was in the car with him, and a cousin, I think, was in the car. And he was zooming up and down the street, and his sister kept pleading with him to stop because she said, "You're going to cause an accident." And he just kept doing it and kept going faster, and he wouldn't let her out. Well, he ended up having an accident, and she died. And so the prosecutor wanted to, and I think he was only like 16 or something like that. She was a little younger. The prosecuting attorney wanted to prosecute him. And so his father said, "I've already lost one child. I'll never get her back. And please don't prosecute him because that means that I've lost two." Yes, he was wrong. What he did was wrong. He caused the death of my child because they called it, I guess second or third degree, I guess, murder or whatever. So I can hear that same kind of thing being played out in this scenario too. There's a situation, just like, I don't know who that was who was just talking, but yeah, that a real scenario, what you just explained, that caused the conflict,
One.
Right.
Yeah.
So our point is that we are dealing with the father and trying to help walk with him through this. And so we need to be aware that he's going to be going through many different feelings at different times. So some of the time he might want mercy for his son. Some of the time he might want vengeance.
Yeah.
So it's like, we hope he loved both of his children, so there's a lot of conflict in there. And we definitely need to, if we were really working with this man, and as I mentioned, these are actual cases that X went through, and I don't feel, I'm glad it was him and not me to actually have to deal with it. This is someone that does this for, years and years, 23 years.
I can't help but think that to counsel this guy to receive true peace in this conflict of being torn is to encourage him to just speak the truth. I think that's the only way he's going to really find peace in this situation, is speaking the truth. And don't lean so far in either direction. Don't be so angry, you know, to say stuff you'll feel bad about. And don't be so forgiving that it's not just for other people around the situation. There needs to be that balance, and I think that truth is just where that balance is. I was encouraged truth probably
Right,
the
so-
best way I could.
So you want to help the father throughout the process not feel responsibility for
Yes.
the result of a son's
Not,
action.
not play one way where he's going to suffer,
He himself
afterwards.
afterwards for his,
you know, when the anger goes away.
right.
How is he dealing with this, though? Is he drinking? Is he doing?
Good point.
taking
Okay.
That
drugs?
could destroy a third
You
one.
know, so we need to know where he's at in his, what he's doing to, I guess,
Yeah,
medicate.
no, that's
his-
good.
Is he self-medicating?
Yeah,
What is he
yeah.
doing to process it? To
Yeah.
keep it?
That's good. That would be the
Okay, so
destruction
is
of the
he taking
third.
some kind of
really
substance
important
to help get
because-
through?
Because if
Now we
he's
got
doing
three-
that, then we
three
got
people.
another thing going on that we need to address.
Okay.
I think she was trying to speak.
Louisa, were you trying to say something?
No, I actually got interrupted. I'm sorry.
Okay, welcome.
I'm good.
Okay. All right, so we're going through case 4, and I'll mail you, like I said, I'll mail you the papers. I don't know if you can see the case 4 on your screen.
I can.
Okay, great. Okay, what
Thank
type, okay, question number 3, what type of ongoing support could be created for him?
Assessing the rest of the family.
Definitely counseling.
Understands, you know, is he getting support from the rest of the family or what that's like? And if not, then is there a group of people he can get support from? Does he go to a church? Is he part of any kind of other, you know, I guess just assessing, assessing his community, his connections, where support could come from, you know, helping him establish that.
Okay, and in one of the answers results from the previous case, there is that group called Grief Share. In our areas, we can check what type of support groups are applicable. Like I've had needs to check out, you know, things about mental health support groups, you know, family members that are dealing with somebody that has sickness and stuff. So there are different area groups, but trying to plug him in, finding out if he has a church, that's an important thing. Also understanding if some of the people in his environment are blaming his son,
Yeah.
you know, because they may.
How toxic is his environment?
Right, because a lot of people have a very toxic relationships, okay? So also expressing how we could be available to him. We don't, you know, some people call you in the middle of the night, you know, and you don't, that they abuse that, but the fact that you're there for him too, to be able to talk to him. Okay, number 4, describe the various types of losses he's experiencing.
I think we went over some already, but
Right.
I do too.
loss on both sides. He's, you know, gonna lose a son. I mean, maybe not to death, but possibly to death. I don't know what state they live in, but you know, he already lost his daughter. Now the separation from his son. Maybe he lost his family. You know, maybe.
Right, because it could separate his friends
Yeah.
and family into different camps.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And people could, as he has to testify, people can blame him for what happens to the son.
Right.
But we always have to understand somebody's actions they are responsible for. If you're drinking and you killed somebody, you may not have intended to hit them with the car or to pull the, well, if you have a gun, then you know,
Yeah, that,
your actions, the son is responsible for what happens to himself because he did this.
yeah, it just should remind us that we don't want him to be one of the losses.
Right.
Yes.
We don't
Right.
want him to be one of the losses, so it's like, whatever's going on, whatever he's experiencing, the focus has to be on guarding him, that he's not lost over this situation.
Right.
And also the fact of you have to look at what type of relationship. We know, yes, that his daughter was murdered by the son, and we know that the son is being prosecuted. However, we don't know what the relationship was, between the father and the daughter, between the father and the son. So that could be another loss. The son could be his best friend. Not best friend in that, but that
Yeah.
that's my boy, and everything. Or it could have been the same thing, with the daughter. So relationship that they had besides the fact that biologically I am your father, you are my daughter, you are my son.
Right. And I think one of the things too is that it needs to come out what the relationship was between the siblings, because it could have been that she got in the way of something in a fight and he had a weapon, or it could be that he was on drugs. It could be that he hated her. It could be that there's a lot of different things. So we definitely need, when we're dealing with people, we need to definitely try to examine things from a lot of different angles and not be afraid to ask questions. And so we also, going back to what we were talking about, the last case that we dealt with was talking about a suicide and the stigma of suicide. There's also a stigma in a murder case. So there's that uncomfortability. Your son murdered your daughter, and people are going to be uncomfortable with relating to the father after the fact. So a lot of times people lose friends because they don't know how to deal with what you're going through. So he could be experiencing other relationship losses. Okay, so number 5 says, how would you help him grieve?
I think helping him separate what he's responsible for and what he's not, as far as maybe he's experiencing guilt, and kind of helping him when his son made his own decisions, or just kind of helping him navigate through that would be a way to help. One avenue.
Right.
I think through the conversations with the father too, we have to establish how close he was. Was he a father that was on hands and there for his children, or was he a workaholic, never home, and then all of a sudden this happened? And so I think by the previous questions, getting, some of the questions we would ask him, but we do know that it is a grief case because that's what he made the appointment for, a complicated grief case.
Right. And we also need to normalize any anger or guilt or hurt or loss that he's experiencing. And that's why that we have that crazy feeling of grief worksheet, which I'll put back on the screen toward the end, because it's at the end of my screen stuff. So one of the ways I would help him grieve is encourage him to communicate what he's going through.
Yep.
Okay, I think we definitely don't want somebody to bury all the different things, the emotions and things that he's going through during this whole ordeal. Any other suggestions that how you would help?
I think with this one and also with the last one, like you mentioned the ball of grief, I like that handout. And then sometimes I would print out like the actual stages of grief, and we kind of go through it together, and we talk about how there's not necessarily, it's not all.
Can't hear.
When we get to the responses, because I already changed
One day here, the next day you can get through those stages of reading. Well,
Yeah.
with what they're
the ball of grief that you hand out, that's
Oh.
one of the handouts.
the next day you can begin, like, it doesn't look the same, helps them as well.
I already changed pages here. Let's talk about one to that, and I'll show that after we go through our questions on the screen, the ball of grief. That crazy feelings of grief that also, talks about some of the wild, in the trauma and crisis counseling book, there is a page with the different stages, and it does show that. We can make a copy of that for people that don't have the book. But definitely to know that it's important that you don't do one thing and get over it, and it never comes, that feeling or that surge never comes back again. So let's go on, I guess, unless somebody else has any comments about helping, how you would help them grieve. All right, so our author said, this is a very difficult case. The loss of a child to murder is overwhelming enough, but the way in which it occurred and by whom it occurred is beyond comprehension. So I think that goes to say that, trying to indicate how you feel isn't going to cut it here.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I really want to emphasize, because when I've experienced things or dealt with people, there's always people, oh, we know how you feel, it's always going to be all right. Well,
No.
we all
No, you
experience
don't.
the same things. We could all be in this room and a bomb could go off and all of us could react differently to it. So I can't say that I know how you feel, because we're all different. So there is no way that most of us could ever grasp the torment afflicting this father. The death of a sibling by a sibling is an indescribable loss to their father, a loss that continues to grow with no end in sight. Perhaps that the words that name common emotions on the ball of grief, which is from the Complete Guide to Trauma and Counseling book, which is part of our course for certification. And I have copies again, if somebody is interested, would be only a beginning to try to describe this grief. But when we look at that ball, it has a bunch of names and different things, and so you can point out that this may be something you feel at some time, just like Rebecca said. You can make a comment like, I would imagine it's almost impossible to try to put into words what you've been experiencing at this time. That's a good statement. I think that if we can practice saying that to ourselves, I would imagine it's almost impossible to try to put into words what you've been experiencing at this time. So let's consider what this father is probably experiencing. And this is taken from an excerpt from Living with Grief After Sudden Loss by Kenneth J. Doka, PhD. When death occurs from sudden, unexpected circumstances, such as accident, suicide, or murder, bereavement reactions are more severe, exaggerated, and complicated. The mourner's capacity to use adaptive coping mechanisms is overwhelmed. There are varied reasons for the delayed, exaggerated, and complicated, boy, I can't read today. There are varied reasons for the delayed, exaggerated, and complicated bereavement reactions experienced by survivors of homicide. Major characteristics experienced by survivors are cognitive dissonance. Okay, so we've only been talking about emotions, but there are physical and mental reactions too. In the last session, we talked about a child who witnessed her mother overdosing probably. And so they talked about the different physical and mental reactions that her body and her mind would be experiencing. So there may be disbelief and murderous impulses, conflict of values and belief system, and withdrawal of support due to the stigma of murder. Survivors must deal with feelings of fear and vulnerability. Yeah, because like if you've been robbed, sometimes you feel like you're open to that, your lack of protection and vulnerable again. Anger, rage, shame, blame, could blame his son, blame himself, guilt and emotional withdrawal. The lack of familiarity and support by law enforcement, because they're out to convict. They're doing their job. They're not bad guys. You know, there's just the justice system. If it wasn't somebody you knew, you would want that person convicted. You would want justice. So there's a conflict in there. You want justice for your daughter, but yet the recipient of justice would be a blood relative. The criminal justice system and media intrusion, we didn't talk about media intrusion, also complicates bereavement. So there's going to be insensitive people trying to make money off of your grief and publicizing your private pain and situation. The delays in resolution of the murder conviction. Okay, so we haven't really talked about how long this process is. Okay, lack of adequate punishment for the crime and lack of acknowledgement by society increases the feelings of loss.
Definitely.
To add to this is the fact that a brother killed his sister. Okay, so question number 2, any comments about the author's response to question number 1, what feelings might be involved?
No, it brought out some things that I didn't even think of.
So this book was very helpful to me, and going over these cases and hearing what other people, how you all see this as someone that would be trying to minister in these situations has helped me. So I think it's a great opportunity for all of us to learn from one another. Okay, so what are some of the questions you would ask the man at this time? Saying the words, number 2, tell me about your daughter, is a simple way to help him begin to tell his story. There's a high probability that he will jump around and talk about or ask questions concerning every aspect of what happened. So at first, it's going to be all jumbled, but as he goes through time, I think that it'll go more along a timeline and see what's going on sequentially. And that also helps us to process and take some of the emotions away when we consider, of course, this is going to take a long time for emotions to be diminished in this case, I think. So there's a high probability he will jump around and talk about or ask questions concerning every aspect of what happened. Here is a simple way to help him focus. I know how difficult it is to talk about one part of this, but it may help to structure this a bit more. Let's talk about blank for a few minutes. So as he's talking, we might want to refocus and go back to a certain part to get some continuity or make him more aware of his thoughts or feelings on that. So I know how difficult it is to talk about one part of this, but it may help to structure this a bit more, because then you're looking at the whole picture. Mm-hmm. That is very important, I think, in dealing. Let's talk about blank for a few minutes. So that's something that maybe a look that he saw in his daughter's eyes, or something his son said, or that you noticed affected the father while you were talking. So let's talk about that for a few more minutes. Because of the complexity of this case, it was difficult to focus on what to grieve. He needed information and insight, not just about grief, but about trauma as well, because there are physical and emotional reactions to trauma, which intersect and work together too. Because of the notoriety of this case and the legal aspects, he can expect that his grief will continue for years. The high visibility of such a case will keep the pain at a higher level as well. It would be good to continue to ask questions just to help him voice his pain and confusion. When there are questions for which you have no answers, simply say, I wish we could find an answer for those questions, but right now it seems that no one has an answer. That's a good statement too. Let me read it again. I wish that we could find an answer to those questions, but right now it seems that no one has an answer.
I had a therapist one time years ago, and I was asking something about my father, and she said almost that same thing to me. And even though it really was, she wasn't saying anything, she said so much in saying that, because she was not trying to be like the person that knew everything, but also she was also understanding, and I was seeing that she saw the pain I was having, even asking the question that I asked. I don't even remember what the question was now, but I remember that answer.
So there's an uncertainty, and we can express that it's okay not to have the answer that at this point, and it's also acceptable to have the question. But how can we be comfortable with not having that resolved right at this moment? And if we're dealing with Christians, and as we're all Christian people, so that we know that God has the answers and that He will bring things to light as we are able to bear them and process them, and He will. And even if in this life we don't have all the answers, when we're with the Lord, we will have the answers. And also knowing that He's with us.
You're enhancing the fact that I didn't like this statement, and now I know why I didn't like it. It says, I wish we could find an answer to those questions, but right now it seems that no one has the answer. I'm thinking, yeah, someone's got the answer. I think I would have said, but right now we don't. I wouldn't have said, but right now no one has the answer. I don't know. It sounds so definitely like a brick wall. It's like, I would have said anything but that. I wish we could find an answer to those questions, but right now we're still looking. But right now we don't know. But right now it seems that no one has an answer. I don't know.
Well,
I'm not warming up to that.
But the word, it seems that no one has an answer, gives you an open. It still leaves it open to be able to come back and address that.
The word seems?
Well,
Okay.
the thing is, we need to, in some of this dialogue, as we mentioned in the beginning, we're acclimating it to how we express things, right? So it's a general thing to say that there's a doubt right now that the answer isn't right in front of us. If the person is a Christian, we can talk about God has an answer.
Right.
Yeah.
When you introduce God in the picture, it's like,
But
I
we
wonder
don't
when
know.
we can do that.
We don't know, so this would be more of a generalized kind of answer.
Right,
to
so
that.
what we're trying to do is establish a vocabulary that we can draw from. Like I mentioned in the first session that, when we have scripture, we instill it, we read on it, we meditate it, and we ponder it, and then at an appropriate time, the Holy Spirit brings that thing back to us. Well, we don't have all the words to say, but some of these things that we're going over are appropriate in many situations. So what we're doing is we're putting it in here somewhere, and then because as we're dealing with people of the Holy Spirit, we're working in conjunction with God, the Holy Spirit, and He will bring us some of these things back. So if we don't ever learn some of these phrases, we can't adapt them to our situation. So
Yeah,
in your particular case, you don't like the part that says no one has an answer. So you would change it. You would use a different way of saying that
you're right.
the answer is right
It
here.
could be a transition phrase. Or whatever, it could have been said worse. It could have been said worse. It could have said, but right now, it seems there is no answer.
Well, that's not true because there is an answer. We just don't
I
have it.
know, well, that would be saying it worse.
That would be saying it worse. So that's why we want to practice. You want to say, I don't want to say that there's no hope, buddy.
Right, right.
We all, as
I
Christians,
know,
It
yeah.
seems there's no hope. It seems that no one knows the answer.
right, but if you say there is no answer, that's like cutting out, there's no hope.
Yeah.
You're never going to have a resolution to this.
That
Yeah,
part, it
I'm sorry I'm
seems
making
kind of
such
makes
a
it
big
more
thing
about
out of this.
perception
Yeah,
than.
yeah, it does leave it open. I know I've used that same answer with my nephew, but in a godly way. I said, I wish I could answer that for you, but you know what, Anthony? Let's ask God to show us what we should do. So if the person is receptive to God, I mean, that was something that God, it was something from a non-Christian therapist who said that to me, but it stuck with me so deeply and it helped me at that time. So you're right. The Holy Spirit brought that back in a different situation. Of course, it wasn't anything about this, but
Right.
I know there's something little 4-year-old was asking me about, was really upset about, but to be able to bring God into it. So, yeah.
I think you're right, Trish. By saying it exactly this way, right now, it seems that no one has the answer. Perhaps that person you're saying that to would say, do you think God has the answer? I mean, that would be an open door, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, that could be, because sometimes in our dealings, we can minister in the comfort of God and bring in salvation, okay?
And
Yeah.
isn't it according to what the question was? Because I can see, I'm hearing all the answers and they all sound good. His sounds good, yours sounds good, the other person sounds good too. It's according to what they're making that particular statement
About his pain.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, what was
To
the
help him voice his pain and confusion.
Okay.
I'm
let's
sorry,
start.
what did you say?
She said it was about helping him voice his pain and confusion.
Oh, right, exactly. But I know it's helping him voice his pain and confusion, but the statement that I wish we could find an answer to those questions, but right now it seems that no one has an answer. You have to know what the questions he was asking concerning his pain and confusion. So this answer could be right. And then the gentleman, I don't know who it is because I can't see him, says that he was conflicted with that no one has an answer of that part of the statement. Well, yeah, in a particular, like you said, Trish, in a particular way, he could choose to use that. He can choose not to use it. It's according to what the pain and confusion, what they're saying in the pain and confusion, as to whether you would say that particular or how do you say tilted a little bit, well,
kind of change it a little bit.
Yeah, right. So
I like that.
Right, so all of this, right now, a lot of this type of stuff is theory about that we're going to draw from an actual situation. So we need to move on here a little bit. It's going slower than I expected. Number 3 was, what type of ongoing support should be created for him? And the counselor's answer was, this father will need others to assist him for years after this event. At this time, he may need counseling 2 to 3 times each week. Not only would a grief support group be beneficial, but also a group for those whose family member is incarcerated as needed. Encourage him to journal daily is important to help him drain his thoughts and feelings. So some type of way to vent and release. If he's involved in a church, develop a support group of men for him to call, spend time with, or just be available for any task or court appearance. He could need help with physical coping things, going to the bank, cutting his lawn, shopping. It could take years for the case to come to trial, and there will probably be numerous delays, which will be re-traumatizing to this father. So the author recommends that we look at chapters 8 and 9 of his book, The Complete Guide to Trauma and Crisis Counseling. So if you think that I like this author, you're right, because he's got some good answers. Number 4, describe the various types of losses he's experiencing. I think we did talk about that. Let me just read it to concretize it a little bit. The losses here are multiple. He has lost both children in different ways, and at some time the following will need to be addressed. The fact that he may have lost someone who would have taken care of him in the future, right? You don't know if he has other children or if they would be able to, as he ages, assist him as he ages. Handling the remarriage of a son or daughter-in-law. If they move, the grandchildren may be lost. So if the daughter had a partner and children, those relationships could be lost if they moved. And that might be a possibility because they might want to get away from it. You know, they might want to get away. The significant date losses and developmental losses. So we know that when there's a birthday, the anniversary of this, the anniversary of the son being arrested, or found guilty. We don't know that he will be found guilty either. That's another thing. We don't know. And if his son is not convicted, what is he going to feel about that? That's another thing. So there's a graduation, possibly marriage, grandchildren, things that will no longer be experienced. Timeline things. Ambiguous and disenfranchised losses. These abound in the case. Okay, people don't recognize that certain losses as valid. I mean, they might think, oh, your son deserves what he gets. So why do you feel bad about this? Okay. So there are a lot of things that aren't concrete about any of them could be going through, or other family members. Loss of his own identity. He's no longer a father to someone. No closure. Those are just some of the losses. Anybody have any other thoughts about his loss, the father's losses?
That no closure one is probably one of the toughest ones, because when there's no closure, it's like on and on and on.
Yeah, it makes you really realize that he's not going to be 100% fixed. We pick up things along our lives that we take to the grave.
Right. And it's just what do we do with them along the way?
Exactly.
Because he could say, what would my daughter have been doing if she had had children, or if she was, a grandmother, or if she, has graduated from high school or college, or was able to fulfill this dream of hers, and it's not possible.
Some things will be harder to process than others, but if you include God in his counseling, he's going to get the best of the freedom and the closure that he can possibly get any other way.
Right. So as if the person that even if not, depending on the open doors, encouraging the person to look for God to meet the needs is always helpful. Okay. How would you help him grieve? Number 5. Since we have multiple losses, focus on one at a time. And that would probably be depending on what the one is that surges in in importance at the time. It'd be useless for me to concentrate on the loss of a son to a prison term or whatever, if right now he's thinking about the loss of his daughter, or even who's gonna pay for the son's defense? You know,
Yeah, we haven't even looked at that, the
you know, it's,
financial aspect of it.
right, there's financial, there's the physical wear and tear on him himself.
Sure.
So whatever it is what we need to focus on at the time. Expect to cover the same material again and again because of the complicated nature of this case. I think sometimes I get impatient with people that I deal with because it just seems like we're going over the same ground all the time, and they should be over it by now. You know, so the more serious an affair is, that I think the more understanding we can be, but it's sometimes, you know, until he's comfortable and has reached some kind of resolution in his heart, it's going to be there. And I think to be there for the long run, or help him to find somebody that eventually that more adequately can help him, you know.
Especially if it's like a trial case. Like they said, there'll be delays, they'll be pushing it back. It could go on for so many years. I mean, I've known of cases that have lasted 10 years or so. And they just go on and on and on. So like they said previously somewhere, that it just reopens, re-traumatizes the whole thing all over again.
Right.
So that's something where he needs to be
able to.
He needs to be hooked into some kind of counseling or support or something through the duration and afterwards, for sure.
And if the person is, you know, sometimes things that we jump into, we're not prepared to go the long haul. We need to pull somebody in and kind of gradually pass the baton, because some things are over our heads. We're just not equipped to handle something, and you know, depending on the rapport we have with the person, we have to, you know, if they don't click with us, then there's no, you know, that's not good. But if we can't handle some of the things that they're going through for the long run, for whatever reason, you know, if we have a baby, sometimes we can't
answer a whole load of clients.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I'm pulling up the crazy ball of grief
All the confusion.
for the people online and for our recording. So there's a number of different feelings of grief that are all kind of tangled like a ball of yarn. And so some of them, I don't know what one stands out to you.
Repeated too.
You know, just a lot of different things. Denial, you might feel abandoned, anguish, loneliness, vindictiveness. But this is rage. This is a handout that you guys will get mailed to you, that you guys already have, that you can copy to give to somebody to help them understand some of the different things are common, that you're not the only one going through this, and these are accepted normal reactions. Now, hatred and bitterness might not be good feelings to hold on to, but they are things that we have to deal with, okay? So this is just a page that we can give to people, and I think it helps us in whatever loss or problems we're dealing with to hand out to people. In the responses, the crazy feelings of grief, I'm just going to read them out loud. I have them on the screen here. Distorted thinking patterns, crazy and/or irrational thoughts, fearful thoughts, feelings of despair and hopelessness, out of control or numbed emotions, changes in sensory perception, sight, taste, smell, and so forth. Sometimes you don't have time, concept of time, and you don't know, or direction. You don't know that this is Saturday, the 13th of March, And where it's the afternoon, you know, you kind of lose that, oh, we were supposed to be somewhere at 2 o'clock, you know? Yeah. Or even one person was not able to drive, figure out how to get to a friend's house that was within like a 1 mile radius, that lived a mile from them, square mile from them, you know? So there's normal things like that go through us when we face trauma and grief. Increased irritability, that happens to no one, never, right? Not even under. May want to talk a lot or not at all. Memory lags and mental mental short circuits. Inability to concentrate. Obsessive focus on the loved one. Losing track of time. Increase or decrease of appetite and or sexual desire. Difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep, which happens often when we're just stressed, right? Dreams in which the deceased seem to visit the griever. I remember when my stepfather died, a couple weeks later, I dreamt of him in a casket. It was so weird. And the casket tilted and made an indent on his head. And then for some reason, he came back as a person and he had this dent in his head. Just like, what was that all about? It was a weird dream, but you know, it was like, that was like when I was 23, I think. But sometimes you have weird dreams about the person that you've lost, or even your dog or whatever. Nightmares in which death themes are repeated. Physical illness like the flu, headaches, and other maladies. Shattered belief about life, the world, and even God. Okay, so I'm going to leave this on the screen. Let me look. Okay, and we're going to switch gears here. Two of the people that are going to, they're going to come up, and we're going to be going through a dialogue of a lady named Fran and a counselor, and they're going to be doing this for you. So we take a couple of minutes if someone needs to go to the bathroom and get a drink or something. So we're going to switch gears, and the two ladies are going to come up here, and we'll be back in less than 5 minutes for everybody. Okay? Yeah. Yes, you better do that. Yes, you better do that.
Who are these people you're talking to? Sometimes that doesn't seem like you're talking to us.
Because
There's Zoom people.
There is?
yes.
There's people on
But-
Zoom.
How many?
2?
Only one speaking?
Yeah.
Okay.
We understand.
How would I know? How would you know?
I was so full by this, I got a class picture.
Did Rebecca go in this bathroom or the car wrap?
I didn't see it.
Yeah, I like it. You could hear it clearly. That was sweet.
You know what? You know, I'm talking about my friend Karen.
I gotta go.
Oh, okay. I'm not gonna talk to you then. You know, I'll just talk into the hallway. Well, you know, No, that's okay. That's okay, Mark. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my gosh.
Okay. I just heard the first thing. I thought the calendar says very little, so I'm like, I didn't think I did that.
Yep, it's a good idea to go. Okay, so Rebecca, if you want to go into the first chair. And I'm gonna sit over here and, in the first chair, and then, Cindy will sit there, and I'm gonna need to sit here so that I can scroll this for the people. I think I need to get some more water. You sure you don't want to be Fran?
I'm a little bit positive, but not completely.
A little bit positive that you do or you don't?
That I don't.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't want to be grand.
You could be the counselor. If you come to another one, you can.
She doesn't say a whole lot.
I
Counselor.
could be lagging and everything.
Oh, she has one bigger chunk,
Yeah.
but that's a good counselor. You know, that's a good counselor.
Yeah.
They don't say too much.
That looks like a bottle one of my daughter's has.
Yes, I see Amy with it and I think, did I bring no?
Yeah, because Amy and Elise both have a different one that's white with pinkish stuff, and they sometimes bring them separately or whatever. It's like, is this one? And if they leave it, you know, it's like, who wants this? Do you want to bring some water up?
Well, this is good.
Okay. No problem.
So I was looking at one of the references, is that from one of the books? I think one of the books. Used for the was one of the titles you had in there looked familiar.
Yeah, I have this one, what we use in the chapel, and the certification for it currently is a book by H.R. Wright. The crisis and, like a guide to crisis and trauma counseling, and that's what we use as part of our certification curriculum.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to use this because I didn't memorize it.
No, you're not gonna, you probably can't see this, so I don't know if you want to move it over to see it, but yeah. I'm gonna do this up so that the people online in the recording. Yeah, it is.
Oh, crap. Oof. Still not there. Oh, Are they talking?
Now you should, that, somehow that got muted.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry,
Thank
this
you.
one got muted. So basically, I mean, you were able to read the transcript. You didn't hear the great acting that Cindy did as Fran, the client, but she did a really great job.
I can do it again.
No, we don't have time to do it again. So we're basically discussing
Don't threaten me.
the analysis, which I'll read out loud
No,
again,
that's good.
because if you couldn't hear it, the other people couldn't hear it. I might just voice over and read it from, you know, in the recording. So the analysis, this case was a brief interaction that focused on what I felt were Fran's concerns, and I attempted to reflect the key issues she was expressing. Some of the questions were designed to help her handle the inevitable, which means her dog passing or having to be put to sleep, and think through the impact as well as diminish the effects of the loss, which in our dialogue we talked about anticipatory loss. So sometimes we know something is going to happen, or there's a threat of a loss in the future, and that is a grieving in the present for what could happen in the future. So knowing that you're going to have to put a pet down, or if you're going to have an operation and lose a body part, you know, they're going to have to remove something, that's anticipatory. How are you going to recover from things? So we need to, in the present, sometimes deal with a grief that could come or might not come. You know, because sometimes we worry about things in the future that never come to pass.
Yeah.
But yet it's still a problem to people in the present. So helping a person to make plans for what they will need to go through if such an event does happen. For example, if a job loss, then what, you know, you're threatening to be laid off, or they're going to close your plant, or, you know, that industry is dying, so there's not going to be employment in that, ready employment in that area any longer. So what can you do ahead of time to be ready? Well, if you were going to lose a job, you might consider now in the present retraining for something, right?
Sure.
So looking through what you would need to do. For example, in this dialogue, the owner was, well, confronting, well, how is she going to do it? What, you know, would somebody go with her to the vet to take their pet in? And is there somebody you can contact ahead of time that you can go to? Because again, a lot of people don't understand a person's attachment with their pet. It's, you know, which, and it, particularly in this case, it seemed like the pet was like their major companion.
She had some real mental issues too. I mean, she was depressed, she took an overdose, I mean, there was a whole lot of underlying stuff going on with her, and that pet was keeping her together, it
Right,
seemed like. So there was I mean, this thing could go on and on and on.
right. So that there is that too. In any
Oh, I
case
was so
that
messed up.
we knew you were that messed up. But yeah, you noticed that she had taken some pills,
Yeah,
and we don't know if it was in.
and how many times she was hospitalized for depression, like 3 times or something?
Right, so, and then finding somebody to take care of her pet while she was in there. So this is something major in this lady's, so we would want to help find some kind of things to help stabilize her. Of course, God is always a good thing to make us stable.
Absolutely.
Any other thoughts about dealing with this situation? Was there any wording that anybody liked besides the part about the letter?
Well, it was good that the counselor was very, anytime Fran spoke, the counselor was hearing her, what she was saying. She was saying, I'm hearing what you're saying, and see that it's, that it's hurting you and such, so.
Well, and then as you mentioned, all these underlying problems.
Yeah. Fran's a mess.
So the dog isn't the only thing, but it's a major thing that, like you said, so she would need some other type of support and would probably get another pet.
Yeah, but it looks like she was depressed, and when she came out, the dog was there. So to me, the dog was her help. The dog was her like medication or her calming effects. Yeah, support system.
Well, I think
absolutely.
one of the things I think we don't always understand is, we're people that have emotions, and we think, oh, we can get by yourself, and I'm not real attached to people and need to be around people, but we all need affection.
Yeah.
We all need to feel needed. So a pet is, if you're in a cold family that doesn't express any kind of love or support or affection, a pet is something that fills the need that normally we relate to in family. And as the families break down, we find that there's less and less attachment to, and that expression. God made us creatures with emotions.
That's becoming more evident, like even like the situation with airlines allowing like little horses and what would they call those
Support
things?
pets.
Support pets.
Yeah.
The different types of animals. Like I think they closed down like having a support snake pet. It's like how much support. I've had big snakes, and man, they're cold and they're not. There's nothing bad about them.
Unless they're a python and wrap around you and hug you too tight.
But anyway, it's becoming recognized that people live with the help of support from not only other people.
Right, not even medical
pets.
support animals like dogs that can wake you up if you're having a seizure or help you to walk, you can't see.
Yeah. During COVID, I was, because I live alone and church was closed down, we could only Zoom. I went and got a cat because I needed some kind of breathing, living if it wasn't a person, it had to be an animal, and I didn't want to get a dog because I didn't.
And it needs you.
Right.
It gives you purpose.
Now
Right.
it drives me crazy. But I still love
got
it.
you through the quarantine.
It got me through the quarantine.
No,
Go,
don't dump it,
Peaches.
right?
No, I love him.
So what's its name? COVID?
No, he was from another person who couldn't have him anymore, and his name is Peaches.
Peaches.
I always call him a she, but he's a he.
I'm
And
just-
you named them Peaches?
I didn't. He's 7 years old, so in fact, he's gonna have a birthday on April 6th. He's gonna be 8.
I'm gonna be busy, I'm sorry.
No,
Okay, I'm reneging your,
Thank you.
okay, I'm just scrolling up on the handout, the cries of grief that we're giving so that it's on the recording, but we can keep talking while we're considering this so that the people can, it's in the handouts that you got,
Yeah.
so.
I was looking at it earlier.
So anyway, let me think. So I think, reading over this dialogue gives kind of an idea of what it's real. Some of the times it seems like stilted, but this is something, a transcript of something that
It really happened.
really happened with, of course, a different name. So, again, I think these are helpful exercises. I would hope that you can make some comments, write down some comments, either text them or email to me about what you received out of participating in this session, because it's kind of like something that not a whole lot of people could understand, and also that might want to go back and take a look at the recording. I don't know if there's something that anybody else wants to share. I know that the actual voice of the recording wasn't able to be heard for a few minutes, actually the whole transcript, so I have to, but I think one of the important things that I see is that the counselor recognized the importance to Fran.
Yes.
And I think that's important in anybody else? No? Okay, well then I think we've got the end of all the material, so I want to thank everybody for coming, for signing in.